Good morning, committee. House Bill 2624 would require that federal disability determinations be probative. HB 2624 also prohibits state agencies and municipalities from reconsidering a veteran's disability determination. Subsection A defines the terms non-service connected, service connected, and veteran. Subsection B requires that the findings of a service-connected disability or death by federal officials be probative. State agencies and municipalities shall not reconsider disability terminations made by the Secretary of the Army, the Secretary of the Navy, the Secretary of the Air Force, the Secretary of Homeland Security, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and the Secretary of Commerce with respect to each component of the military that such individuals lead. State agencies and municipalities also shall not request or demand that a veteran voluntarily seek a reevaluation of the veteran's service-connected disability claim. Subsection C states that the veterans or the veteran's surviving family may be asked for certain documents regarding the disability or death of such veteran. Subsection D requires a veteran or a veteran's family to disclose a veteran's percentage of disability evaluation if that percentage is relevant to the statute in question. This bill will take effect on July 1st, 2024, upon publication in the statute book. And I can stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Ruiz.
Thank you. Has this happened before, that all the entities that were described as perhaps trying to change the disability? Is that the purpose of the bill?
Representative, I believe the conferees may be able to come up with some situations where that might have happened.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. We have a proponent, president of Military Officers Association, Mike Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. I'm with the Kansas Council of Chapters, and I'm not the president until next year. Right now, I'm just the legislative chair, but thank you for promoting me. 2624 will correct a potential injustice that's in Kansas law. Right now, there are Kansas laws that only recognize certain federal disability determinations made by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. But there are quite a few federal officials that can grant a federal disability. And where this comes up is when a soldier or sailor is injured on active duty, their disability process is handled by their service secretary and not by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. So you have the situation where someone could be medically retired from the Army, have their disability determination from the Secretary of the Army, and they apply for a Homestead Property Refund Act refund under that law. And the auditor says, but the tax law says your disability has to come from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, which is what 794501 India says right now. And so that's the potential, Representative Ruiz. I don't know for a fact that that has happened, but we want to prevent it from happening. And we want to make sure that every veteran that goes through a disability determination process, that can be an arduous, contentious process in some cases. Some disabilities are very easy to prove. Others are not. And for the ones that are not, when someone finally wins that contention with the federal government, they shouldn't have to come to Kansas and relitigate that. It should be done. And so the other thing that Kansas gains by that is there's been years and years of administrative determinations and legal case law on a lot of these issues. Kansas gains all that by using the federal definitions. And when we use the federal definitions, we reduce the potential burden on our courts because people won't have to sue, because you can just talk to people and say, look, I've got a federal document. It's probative, which means the evidence is sufficient for Kansas purposes, assuming this bill becomes law, of course. And the Kansas official should say, I guess you're right. You've got a federal document. You are indeed considered a disabled veteran. The other thing that I saw happening is a couple of years ago, and it was a license plate bill about the disabled veterans license plate bill. Many of you may have heard about that. Where that bill started was a draft that said that a veteran had to have a mobility connected disability. Well, what that was going to create was a situation where all 105 county treasurer's offices were going to have to decide what a mobility connected disability was. So in effect, they were going to have to reevaluate a disability determination. And we wanted to prevent that. And the bill that actually got through on the disabled veteran license plate took out that language, and it prevented veterans from having to expose their medical records to county treasurer license plate personnel. And so this bill also protects medical privacy, because what you have to disclose is, I have my federal disability, it's rated at a certain percentage, and that's it. That's what you have to present. That's what's under 2624. And we'll talk about 2625 in a few minutes. And these two will go together to make sure that there's an easily understood and clear administrative process that a disabled veteran or service-connected veteran will have when they're dealing with Kansas agencies that are administering a Kansas program to benefit veterans. We shouldn't make it harder for Kansas veterans to get their benefits from Kansas under Kansas law. Sir, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Representative Ruiz?
Just a follow-up question. Thank you for that clarification also. Will this, so looking at, let's say just our surrounding states, is there a law already protecting veterans in all the other states?
Representative Ruiz, I'm sorry I didn't do my homework last night on that. To my knowledge, there is not a bill that specifically calls out federal disability determinations as probative.
So we don't know, say a veteran moves to Nebraska, whether the disability, they'll be able to have, claim disability in that state.
No, ma'am, but I think that it would help their case if they said, well, when I lived in Kansas, under Kansas law, this was probative. And I'll look at the revisor. She knows that I've been studying the relevant federal laws on this. I have not looked at the surrounding state laws, so I don't want to make a statement about surrounding states. But I have looked into the federal laws that govern this as much as a non-lawyer can do.
Hopefully this will keep our veterans here.
Yes.
Thank you. Representative Dodson?
I just would add that I sent all the bills that we're going to be considering up to Senator Moran's office. He has two people from DOD that sit in his office as interns. And to the extent we can, we're just pushing some of these forward. I've got a couple others up there that have to do with internment and things like that. So as we get an opportunity with the various agencies like the VA or others, then you'll try to gin those up, and maybe something in there to persuade the states to act in similar manners as we're doing. As you may remember, when we did 2066 2 years ago about spouse employment and so on, that was supported up at his office and other offices there around him, Senator Marshall and so on.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Collins, did you have any statements or questions? Okay. Just you do your testimony. Okay.
Just remember, it used to be the Army Air Corps.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Guess not. Thank you, sir. Well, are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Well, if not, we're going to close the hearing on HB neutrals. I always wondered about the yes or no. Yes, any neutrals? Okay. I've always wondered. They never say anything. Never mind. I better be quiet. Well, we're going to close the hearing on HB 2624. Now we're going to start the hearings on HB 2625. And if our revisor will explain that to us.
Good morning again, committee. House Bill 2625 limits the documentation required to determine eligibility benefits derived from a service-connected disability. Section 1 defines the terms service-connected and veteran. It also states that no state agency or municipality shall request or demand any other document to determine eligibility for a benefit derived from a service-connected disability, except for the 6 forms of documentation listed in the bill. Those documents include a U.S. passport, a Veterans Health Identity Card, a Veterans Identity Card, a Common Access Card, or any Department of Defense identity card. This bill shall take effect on July 1st, 2024, upon publication in the statute book, and I can stand for questions.
Are there any questions? Questions? Well, that must have been well done. Thank you. Our first proponent would be Mike Kelly, soon to be president of the Military Officers Association.
Kansas Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your support. I have to find out who my campaign treasurer is, so I make sure I do all my disclosures properly. This bill is a companion to 2625, and what it does, it lists the acceptable identity documents for a veteran to prove who they are. And these are some of the same ones that get you through the airport security. And we don't want a situation where a Kansas agency says you have to have some special form that we just ginned up, signed by the VA and signed by the commanding general at Fort Riley before you can apply for a certain benefit. You just need to prove your identity. And then with the documentation in the companion bill in 2624, that should be it. So it would ease the administration of Kansas programs that benefit veterans. I stand ready for any questions, sir.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any questions? You must have done a very good job. Thank you. The next proponent will be Representative Mike Thompson.
civilian tie today. So, I speak in support of House Bill 2625. The bill will also reduce administrative burdens placed upon service-connected disability, disabled veterans and surviving family members. Provisions in companion bill, House Bill 2624, establish that federal disability determinations are final for the state of Kansas. Therefore, no executive branch shall request or demand any other documents or improvise an authentication procedure to establish eligibility for any benefit derived from service-connected disability suffered by Kansas veteran, except for basic identity documents. This bill will establish the basic documents needed to establish the veteran's identity, which you heard the reviser state the ones that the IDs that are accepted. I thank you for consideration of this House Bill 2625 and will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative, on House Bill 2624, there was a whole list of departments that were not allowed to make any changes to the disability. I don't see that in this bill. It only names, well, it doesn't really even name in the bill the executive branch. Is that a issue?
No, the companion bill 24 is the foundation. So it establishes and says what those documents are. And basically what they are is federal documents. Now, 25 stands on that and just says that it, where Kansas shall accept the federal documents that have been established for that veteran. This bill, the primary focus is what you can ask for is identifications. And then that lists several passport, driver's license, those kind of things.
So it's not just the executive branch, it's everybody else that was listed in the other bill.
I'm not understanding the question.
In your testimony, you said something about the executive branch. No Kansas executive branch official shall request or demand any other document, but it really is everybody else that's on the companion bill.
That one establishes it, and then this one is just saying
I
those that were established.
just wanted to make sure that was clear. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, well, I'll let you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative. Mr. Kelly?
If it would please the committee, I'd like to respond to Representative Ruiz's question. The reason it calls out executive branch is in court proceedings, there's discovery process, and we didn't want this bill to limit the operation of the judicial system in Kansas in any way. And likewise, for the legislative branch to perform its oversight role over government agencies, both in judicial and in executive, if the committee feels like they need a document from a veteran and say, we need to see your federal documents, the legislature could establish a valid legislative purpose for that, then that would be acceptable. But what we don't want is the executive branch to create new administrative procedures that the veteran has to overcome some additional administrative hurdles in order to get their benefits. So this bill, these two bills are focused on the executive branch in Kansas and does not exclude judicial operation of the judicial system or legislative oversight.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions or discussions? Any more proponents? Are there any opponents? And might I say, are there any neutrals? Got that. Well, we're going to close the hearings on HB 2625. And I will do the announcements. Hopefully we'll be able to do this. I have to do this on the back of my church bulletin. That's another story. On February 8th, Thursday, we're going to have a hearings on 2623, if everything's available. We'll do final actions on 24 and 25 that we heard today. And then next week, 13th and the 15th. We'll hear all the bills. We'll work them on the 15th if we can. And the 20th is our last day. And if we have any extra work to do, we'll do it on that day. So February 20th will be our last committee day. Any other announcements? Yes, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of the other bills that our committee are sponsoring come up today. One of them is at the transportation, or the Big Red One. And I'm hoping to be able to be there and speak on behalf of that particular bill. And in doing so, I did a little research with my son, one of two, who both served proudly with the Big Red One. And I said, do you have any mementos for the Big Red One that I might just use as a reason that we would want to have license plates to represent that robust group? A minute later, he came back from the basement. He says, I brought something home from Afghanistan, representing with my time in Afghanistan during the war. And this was at the Regional Command East Combined Joint Task Force, Big Red One. It's got a emblem for the Joint Task Force and the Big Red One on it, Combined Joint Task Force. And on his way out the door, as he headed back to the United States, he happened to pick up a sign that says male latrine. And he said that summed up his year in Afghanistan and his time with the Big Red One, which brought up a couple questions. So the Army uses the word latrine. Navy, I believe, is head. And then what? The Air Force is little boy's room? I'm sorry. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I beg to differ. It's the powder room.
Okay. Too much information. Okay. Thank you, Representative Johnson. Okay. Are there any other announcements? Well, in that case, we'll meet on Thursday and do final action on those two bills and hearing on 2623. Yes. Meeting adjourned.